This is a short recording to look at getting some data on homeworking into a Choropleth map and data wrapper. Usually I duplicate this, but I think I'll just copy what we need, which are these percentages of these percentages of never worked from home for local authorities in England and in Scotland and in Wales. So this is what we're looking at. Let's increase this a little bit. So there we go. That's our data, which has one or two areas where the data is missing or comes with a warning. But we're going to export this now, save as, and not as a workbook because we want a CSV, and we'll call it never data. Okay, I did this earlier, so we'll call it never data 2. Okay, so then we can go to data wrapper and create a new map. And when you try to create a map, it offers you a Choropleth map, which is what we're looking for. And there are a huge number of pre-existing maps for different places. We are interested in the United Kingdom, and even then there's a huge number of maps. So I know the one we want is local authorities, which is here. There's a whole series of some variations in terms of which local authorities are included, and the one that we want is 2019. So that's the map it's going to give us, and we'll be able to align hopefully our CSV, which has data for each of these areas, onto our map. So now we need to give it some data, and we upload never data 2, which was the one we just saved. And so then it tells us if the data we've imported lines up with the map we want to use, that local authorities 2019. And there are 11 unused because, as you'll see, Northern Ireland has not been used at all because we've got no data on Northern Ireland. And there are 3 errors in the values column because there are 3 areas that have an exclamation mark instead of data. So there's nothing we can do about that. We can have a look and see how exactly it treats those exclamation marks. But otherwise, that looks like it's happy to go. You can see that it's matching. It's using codes to match the codes that we have in our data. It's taking the values from the column that we called never, which was never worked from home. So everything's lined up, and there are 11 areas not in use. That's fine. So when we get here, when we get to visualize, probably the most useful thing, there's 3 things we can look at: refine, annotate, and layout. Under refine, we can hide regions without data. And that is really important if you're working on data for Wales, because you often get UK maps and you only have data for Wales. So that's great. We've gotten rid of Northern Ireland. Now we have some options here about coloring, but we'll skip that and we'll go to annotate. And so here we could put in a headline, or we could put in a straight description. Let's put in most people never worked from home. And this is 2020 data, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. In 2020, oh dear. Almost all local authority most people never worked from home. Okay, so I put in almost because there are some exceptions where you get it drops below 50% for people who never worked from home. So these are really crucial. The data source is DONS, which is, that's the essential, that's what we have to have. But we can also put in a link so that people can go and look it up. And if you want a byline, you can put in something here. And you have an option for putting in screen readers. You don't want to show labels because we've got too many areas. If you were to do that, you get this kind of thing. Now, so this is one thing that we might want to adjust. So what we have here is that local authority code from our data, and we have the percentage of people who never worked from home, which has come from the column. And here, these things, these are called tooltips. We can customize these. So this looks a bit unpleasant, but all it's saying here is we're taking the local authority district code. And I think if we look back at our data, yeah, so that's simply the name of the column. So if we were to take local authority district name, we could try replacing that. No, because that's not how it went in. It went in as local authority district name. Yeah. Okay, so we had to figure that out from, oh, there they are. We could have simply looked at these. I think that probably would have been enough. Looks like we can adjust them. No, we can't do that. Okay, let's just have something like that. Okay, so we now have the name of our area, which is great, and then we have the number. But of course, the number means nothing until we explain what it is. So that is percent of people never worked from home. Now we're going to check exactly how the original data describes what we're looking at. The proportion of workers that completed work from home. So we should really say workers, obviously, rather than people. So percentage of workers who never worked from home during 2020. Most workers. I'm going to make that most workers. Can we say that? Left the house. That's probably not entirely correct in terms of how we define home working. Okay, let's just make it we're not working from home. That's safer, I think. Okay, so these are the crucial bits. The other problem we have is this 3789, which we know what it means, but we need to make sure that's actually covered. How do we do that? We adjust this, I think. Is our legend format. Yeah. Okay, so it's simply in here. This is the legend, and so in there somewhere there is an option to adjust from the numbers to the percentages. Now, there's one last thing which would be possibly interesting. Anything else we need on annotate? No. or on layout, which is very basic. Okay. What we could do is we can select a palette. So we could, for example, decide we want it in green, which is the same thing. We're using a range, as you can see, from cream, very light cream, yeah, through light green through to dark green, and that works. It shows us that in these areas, the percentage of people who never worked from home in 2020 gets really high. When you get down here, you can see that percentage of people who never worked from home gets relatively low. However, since we're talking about most people, what might be interesting is to split on a color. So let's try this. Now we need to check what it's splitting on, but that looks about right. Now the center, yeah, okay, the center is 65 because it's basically gone from 37. I suspect it's divided the gap between 37 and 89 and around at 65. However, what would be nice would be to split it on 50, on that point where 50%, we should really say 51% of people never worked from home. Yeah, so now we have, except I apparently can't write English anymore, so we need to adjust the annotation. 50% of workers, or 20% of whoever never worked from home during 2020. Okay, that's better. And so now we have, because we're splitting, we've got 68%. These are all the variations of degree once most people never worked from home. And then we can change color once we drop below 50%. And we start saying, well, actually, the percentage of people who never worked from home is now the minority, which is a useful qualification given our headline. Okay, so our map is done. And I want to check, do we want to do anything with that? We've already looked at that. We can proceed. And then we can publish it. Or we can simply let's publish it so it can live somewhere. And we have a link. Okay, so here's our map, which we can embed as well. So there we go. That's how to get this data, which is essentially a geographical code, an area, and then a percentage, into a Choropleth map, annotate it so people know what we're talking about, and then adjust it so that it actually reads like English wherever we are. And then also, if we, in this particular case, adjust the color range so that it distinguishes between those areas where we had over 50% of people, most people, never working from home, or there are a couple of places, in fact, the percentage of people who never worked from home is under 50. There we go.